This episode is brought to you by CPS Capital, a boutique corporate finance and stockbroking firm located in Perth and Melbourne, and they provide special advice to retail, sophisticated and institutional investors within Australia and around the world. For more information, head to www.cpscapital.com.au. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me on the show today, I've got two gentlemen, both involved in Castillo Copper, but the first is Joel Logan, the non-executive director, and I've also got Kevin Das, the director of ARD Group, a minerals and exploration company, and recently there's been a fair bit of news about a project acquisition, so both the gentlemen are here to talk to the news, so welcome guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
If we start with yourselves first and foremost, I said this is your first time on a podcast. There probably won't be much on the internet that talks about your previous ventures on podcasts and content like that. But if we start with you, Kevin, talk to us a little bit about your history and how you've sort of formulated your career in the minings and exploration scene.
Yeah, well, look, I graduated from Curtin University with honours and with over 20 years experience in the exploration and mining industry now. As a geologist, look, I've worked in a variety of mining jurisdictions all over the world, various commodities, and have undertaken various technical, corporate, business development, exploration management, management roles. Look, I would say, the highlight of my career was being involved with the Northern Minerals team that discovered and developed the heavy rare earths at Browns Range in the East Kimberley region back in 2010. Yeah, look, my passion for geology and economic development led me to start ARD Group in 2016, which is really a mineral investment and acquisition group. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And has it always been focused on WA, or has it taken you all around Australia and internationally, or what's the sort of exposure you've had across resources as well?
Yeah, look, I think it's started in WA. I mean, it's we're truly blessed as a mining state, and but from there, it's taken me to Southeast Asia, to the US, recently South America, Greenland, all over the world, and I think. I think if you're looking for, mineral assets, it doesn't make sense just to stay in one place, but really look for exposure globally for, the best kind of assets you can find.
Yeah, diversify the viewpoints, the experience, and how different jurisdictions approach mining, which is a whole other podcast in itself. But moving across to you, Joel, what's your background and how did it put you in a position that you're the non-executive director? Talk us through your sort of lineage and story.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from the University of Adelaide in 2017. I did postgraduate study at Curtin Uni afterwards. And then I started off as a graduate geologist working for Kirkland Lake Gold in the Northern Territory, doing underground mining for gold. And then later in Pine Creek, not too far away from there, I did gold exploration, greenfields, which was, a big change up from going underground to greenfields. And then after that, I worked for BHP at Olympic Dam, where I gained exposure to copper. And after that, I then worked for Azure in the Pilbara, doing lithium exploration. And not long after working there, I was introduced to Jed Hall, the chairman of Castillo Copper, through a colleague. And based on my experience with copper and the assets that Castillo had at the time that he showed me, we thought that
be a good fit.
Yeah, good fit. So the rest is history. I've been now with the company for about since March, so not too long.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and then even since you've started, there's been a fair bit of changes, and that's probably why both of you sitting in the room with a new acquisition. But talk to us about the priority or the goals of what Castillo Copper is trying to achieve. And I'm already assuming, taking the words out of your mouth, but I'm sure that there's slightly a rebrand coming in the future depending on what happens. But yeah, talk to us about what the company's all about.
Yeah, sure. So basically at the moment, a lot of our assets focus on copper primarily. We're looking at diversifying outside of copper into different commodities, hence why we've now taken this step to look into Hart's Range, which is prospective for uranium, niobium, and heavy rare earths. So just diversifying away from one commodity essentially. And we've got a prospect in the Northern Territory we're pretty optimistic about.
So talk to us a little bit more about how this came across your radar, because again, Northern Territory, it's probably a various projects, and as we know, there's quite a lot of land really across all of Australia. So what was really standoutish about this project, and this will probably go more towards the relationship the two of you have got, but yeah, talk to us about what was sort of the signals that leapt out at you to make you pursue this a bit further.
Sure. So I was sent a pitch deck and by one of my colleagues, and just the grades that were within it just blew me away. Niobium at over 23%, uranium at 12%, and the person who sent through that pitch deck was actually Kevin. So I might actually get him to talk a little bit more about why he thinks it's prospective.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, look, I think what really drew me to this project is some of the high value, not just the grades are pretty impressive, but the mineralisation. You've got your niobium, you've got your heavy rare earths in particular, and you've got your uranium as well. And so there's a really interesting suite of minerals that all kind of come together. And, and I guess if you kind of dig a little bit deeper into the rare earths, the rare earths that are here within the Hearts Range project are predominantly the heavy rare earths, in particular the dysprosium and terbium, which are really high value kind of rare earths, which are very limited in terms of where you can find them. Currently it's really China's the only supply of these heavy rare earths. Northern Minerals, which a company that I was involved with some years ago, also have a heavy rare earth deposit. But you could probably count on one hand globally supplies of heavy rare earths outside of China. So it's a very restricted or limited niche kind of commodity there.
Okay, so again, we've got niobium, heavy rare earths, and uranium in this sort of mixed palette. And you said, Joel, the 22% niobium result that you had, and that was preliminary, quite an exciting bit. I mean, talking about the necessity and why this is important from a niobium point of view for many. I mean, where do we use it? Where is it incorporated into everyday life? And if you know a little bit more about really the range of the macro kind of outlook, and as you said, Kevin, I think China dominates a fair bit of supply of a lot of these commodities, and now diversification away or even finding some in the backyard is becoming more and more important. But starting with niobium, talk to us a little bit more about that. Sweet.
Yeah, sure. So 85% of niobium at the moment is actually produced in Brazil. So it's another place that actually has a bit of a monopoly on. Yep. So basically at the moment, the main function for niobium is that it's used as an alloy for steel. It essentially just enhances the strength in environments where the metal undergoes big temperature changes, high or low. So it's used in aircrafts, engines, rockets, pipelines. So essentially, as the world develops, there's just going to be more of a demand for it. And over the last 5 years, I think it's grown at roughly about 5% per annum. Roughly about 5% per annum. But definitely over the next 5 years, it's projected to grow at over 10% per annum. So you can see the demand there is increasing.
And when we're talking about, again, the potentials that you've got when you're looking at some of more of the results, I mean, going forward, where's the priority going to be focused on for the team at Castillo? And is there more results or even more sampling that's currently underway? If that's jumping the gun a bit, do let me know. But yeah, what else is really underway for part of the Hearts Range project?
So recently, Kevin and I actually went to Hearts Range as a part of due diligence. We collected some rock samples to verify against historical results that we have. It was only a short trip. It was roughly about 3 days. So there's definitely more to be done there. Definitely a more comprehensive exploration programs needed. So we still want to look at doing geophysical surveys and basically a little bit more mapping as well. So essentially we're just going to prioritise focusing on this asset in Hearts Range at the moment. And yeah, that's our focus.
See where it goes.
Yeah,
and I mean, this would probably be more for yourself, Kevin, but historically, I mean, when was some of these drilling or results coming through? Because was it, more recently, or has it been a little bit archival and had to dig up some old school pen and paper sort of results or pencil and paper? But talk to us about that sort of history of this project.
These results were actually early 2000s, I think 2005, and the whole area actually was really looked at for uranium, I guess, from Japanese companies like PNC back in the time there, and then probably it's more recently the Hearts Range is well known for its rubies and gem prospecting. A lot of people go there for that, and it's got some weird and wonderful, very complex geology, and but as a result, some of the niobium, the heavy rare earths, the uranium has kind of been overlooked. And so I think if you want to talk about W01, I think W01 has really brought niobium back into fashion and favour, and it's kind of ignited a bit of a hunt for juniors and companies to really start looking for uranium, and as you said, in our backyard. And as Joel pointed out, most of the niobium is located in Brazil, and I think it'd be great to unlock some of the potential here in the Harts Range as well.
And the other point we talked about, or you mentioned, was the heavy rare earths. And if my memory does me justice, there's quite a few that encompass this rare earth umbrella term, and it's kind of labelled as a marketing ploy, rare earths, and no one really quite understands the everyday punter, the variety of minerals and almost the value of 1 to 20 plus odd. So can you just elaborate a little bit more about this collection of heavy rare earths and the differences and some of the nuances with the materials there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so when you get your rare earths, you get your 17 lanthanides, part of that lanthanide series. You get one, you get all 17. That's just how they occur. Now, when it comes to economics and EVs, there are only 4 rare earths that are of value that the market really focuses on from an economic point of view, and that's neodymium, praseodymium, and dysprosium terbium. Now, neodymium and praseodymium are your light rare earths. They're currently, I think, trading around 55 US a kilogram. Majority of your companies, 9 out of 10 of your companies listed, will contain neodymium, praseodymium, which are your light rare earths. Now, your heavy rare earths, dysprosium and terbium, they are very rare. In fact, the only place you can really get them is from China. There may be a few other places. Northern Minerals was one of the other companies that have heavy rare earths. The Browns Range deposit up in the East Kimberleys is actually quite a strategic deposit because it's high value. And for example, dysprosium, I think currently priced around maybe 217 US a kilogram. Terbium's maybe 780 US a kilogram. Based on Shanghai Metals. So you can just see from economics, if you can have a deposit that's skewed towards these 2 heavy rare earths, all of a sudden your economics are going to look better, your value, your basket price is going to be very attractive. So I think for us a point of difference is that we've got the heavy rare earths, we've got the niobium, which is 45 US a kilogram as a bit of a kicker as well, and then there's the uranium as well. So all of these 3 kind of occur together in this mineral.
Far out. So then again, the smorgasbord that you're dealing with, and this would be the naivety for me, it's a long way away, but going forward from a extraction or even utilizing these minerals, I mean, how do you start even approaching the idea of differentiating and separating them? Because I know it's sort of, you've got to do that part, and I know that there's a lot of talk out of China and doing it in different ways that probably wouldn't be able to get away with in Western worlds. I mean, what are some of the factors or considerations from a even drilling and mining point of view, which is a long way away, but what are some of the considerations that need to be thought about from heavy rare earths, light rare earths, niobium and uranium?
Yeah, look, the separation of your individual rare earth oxides, the 17 oxides, and that's kind of like right down the end, and a lot of that's kind of done in China, and the Western world is really in catch-up mode. You see Linus is a great example, and but we're really in catch-up mode to separate all these oxides. But one thing I can say is the rare earths, the niobium mineralization, it's a very dark mineral, so it's very heavy. It's got a specific gravity of 5.5, and one of the characteristics of rare earths, and I know heavy rare earths, it's paramagnetic, which is weakly magnetic. Okay. And so when it comes to processing, you can use gravity separation because of your specific gravity, your density. You can use magnetic separation, being paramagnetic, and also you could employ ore sorting based on the darker minerals. And so I think there's some definite advantages there when it comes to processing, beneficiation and processing the ore. So
yeah, and I realise that is a long way ahead, but it's always good for me to sort of figure out what's going to happen in the future. But going back, you said you both had a trip up there to sort of do a little bit of additional due diligence, and we're painting the picture of the land mass and I mean where it is and sort of the accessibility and even some of the near players and infrastructure. If someone's never known where this project is or whereabouts it is, can you shed a bit of light on where it's located and some of those features for listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so Harts Range is located about 120 kilometres northeast of Alice Springs. And you can access it pretty easily through the Stewart Highway and then the Plenty Highway, bitumen roads. And then eventually you have to go onto a dirt track. Yep. But pastoralists are there, and there's actually quite a few roads that have been well developed. I think the furthest we had to walk off one of the roads to actually get to some of the mineralized outcrop was about 500 meters. So it's very inconvenient. It's very convenient to get to, and it's not too far away from a major city like Alice Springs.
You touched on their outcropping. Is that another indication of where the focus will be? Because for a lot of these materials, resources, I should say, a lot of people go where you can see it, that's where we start. And is that sort of also an example of what the Harts Range project has got? Is there a lot of outcropping, or what's the sort of indication of where the focus is going to start initially?
Yeah, look, I think when you look at it historically, there's about 4, maybe 5 prospect areas where you're seeing some of the mineralisation outcropping or daylighting. And I think, look, that's what I'd call really the low-hanging fruit, and it's really just a starting point. And so what we really want to do is engage a real systematic approach where, we don't want to just, start and finish with these 5 areas, but really want to identify and understand the mineralisation. And as Joel said, one of the keys will be to do an airborne geophysical survey, and through generating what's a radiometric imagery. And we could utilise that radiometric imagery to find a lot more of these outcrops. I think it's great to have 4 or 5 now, but ideally over the next 6 months, we'd like to have 30 to 40 that we could actually identify, and then head out to site, do a bit of rock chipping, soil sampling, mapping, and then maybe have 30 priority targets that we could have lined up ahead of drilling. And
again, it may not be the point of speciality for the two of you, but when you're talking about this airborne survey and almost getting the results back, I mean, how do you differentiate which are which resources, and is that all again just the advancements in exploration game now? It's a lot easier to differentiate which is which, and how does that all sort of come to the forefront when you get those airbornes done?
Yeah, look, the airborne survey is actually pretty critical in this process, because one thing we know is that the niobium and the heavy rare earth mineralisation has a uranium signature. So when we do these airborne surveys, one of the things we do is filter out all the uranium signatures, circle them and put them on a map, and then basically drive out to each one of those areas. So we know that where you get the uranium, you will pretty much get the niobium and the heavy rare earths. And so that'll be a technique that'll be very key in terms of our exploration strategy.
Okay. And is there a particular sort of ranging of which one you want to focus first? I mean, the niobium with the 22%, 22, 23, 22%? 23, apologies. 23%, is that sort of the pecking order is looking initially at the niobium, or is it now the realistic of we've got to do a sweet look at everything and then go from there? Because as you touched on earlier, Kevin, some companies and some previous explorers just had a particular lens on gold or gems and therefore completely misidentified or just completely disregarded everything else.
Yeah, look, the cool thing with this is that when you find the niobium, you get the heavy rare earths automatically with it. You get the uranium automatically with it. So it's not a case of do we find one or the other. They're all kind of packed into these minerals, and I think uranium will be a pathfinder, and that'll assist us with identifying where the niobium is. And it's just a case of getting to those individual prospect areas, and getting the portable XRF out there, getting the RAD-I, the Geiger counter out there, and getting a good handle on the extent of the mineralisation at each of these sites. So these pegmatites that we've initially identified really the early stages, kind of the low-hanging fruit that was, kind of identified back in 2005 and never followed up. And I can say that they haven't been drilled yet, never been drill tested, and just 29 rock chip samples that have been taken to date. So it's a good start, but a lot more to be done. A lot more to be done, yeah.
So in looking at a timeline, and this would be between the both of you, I mean, how are you looking at approaching, we're racing towards the end of 2024 very quickly. I don't know, there's, seasonality impacts in the Northern Territory. I mean, if you started mapping out a potential approachable sort of exploration plan, and I know, of course, working with Indigenous communities is also now paramount. How are you sort of mapping out this, maybe 6 to 12 month plan of this project, and what are the next steps to bring some of this news to investors?
Yeah, look, the next steps, I think, we'll probably do a few more reconnaissance programs. Like Joel said, the last trip was a quick 3-day due diligence. We were there just to really validate some of these historic results. So much, there's only so much you can do within those 3 days. So I'd say there'd be a few more recce programs where we're going to get back to site and really get a good regional kind of perspective of the area. The other thing we'll do is close-spaced airborne geophysical survey. I think that's going to be essential just from a regional point of view to identify where we want to look. And otherwise, if we're going to get to site, it's going to be looking for a needle in a haystack. Mm-hmm. But if we can kind of vector in with the uranium and try to understand, the key areas, that'll help us really have a targeted approach. Detailed mapping, rock chip sampling across prospects, regional soils. We'll do some mineral characterization work, XRD analysis. That'll kind of tell us what kind of minerals we're dealing with. Bit of trenching and bulk sampling, that would be really good. I think that may help us accelerate some of our flow sheet and how we might be able to produce some of the minerals here, and then target generation and drilling. So I think the next 6, maybe 9, 12 months, that'll be the general exploration strategy.
And are a lot of these methods tried and tested? Are you sort of adopting any new age? Hard to say when a lot of these exploration techniques became new age. Now it's sort of just a customary. But when you're looking at that, is there a particular lineage of which ones you do first, or is it really? I mean, is that part of the direction of the two of you figuring out which is the priority? Like, where do you start? For example, is it the sampling?
Yeah, I think you start with your validation. I think we've already started getting on the ground. Having a look at the infrastructure, meeting some of the people. We probably need to go meet some of the government, mines department, a few more things like that. But essentially, I think the key thing will be is the airborne geophysical survey. Once that's done, that'll give us a big picture of, these are the areas we need to target. Then we can start to formulate teams and a bit more of a robust program that can kind of deliver some of those results. But and ultimately, it'll culminate in a drilling campaign. And we hope by 9 months, 12 months, we could have 30 targets instead of the 4 or 5 that we now have that we can prioritise for drilling.
And Joel, at the beginning you said that Castillo's strategy was now to diversify and have multiple sorts of commodities and projects in sort of the portfolio. I mean, looking across the suite now that Castillo Copper has, I mean, have you sort of got an idea of where you want to start allocating time, resources, and even manpower across the range? Because I know that there's still the copper assets within the company, but there may be a refocus now towards the niobium, heavy rare earths, and uranium, as that's also now, without saying flavour of the month, but there is a lot of interest. But simultaneously, copper is, we talked about earlier, now coming to the forefront as well. So you've got a lot of resources now gaining more and more traction with the electrification future and just the resources coming online. How are you, from a top line, trying to strategize all the opportunities that you've got?
Yeah, so we have an asset in northwest Queensland, the big one, which is a copper asset. Currently, we're going into the wet season at the moment. So over the next roughly 6 months, it's not really feasible for us to actually go there and continue to work there. But post the wet season, we're definitely still focusing on the big one deposit. We've recently been to site and been able to infer that the mineralization actually extends quite a bit further to the west than what we initially thought. We also are looking at going through grants from the Queensland government to undergo greenfields exploration as well, a little bit further north of the known part of mineralization. So we're still definitely focused on our other assets at the moment, but priority at the moment, given the time frame, is Hearts Range.
Yeah. And again, talking about some more exciting things happening there, coming to the market. How do you feel that investors will see this and understand part of this? Do you feel that there's certain key elements that listeners and audiences should see and remember about this new acquisition, this new project coming into the portfolio? And what would you sort of urge people to look at and sort of be optimistic or looking forward to seeing more coming from about this project?
Yeah, sure. Well, the grades, essentially. They're almost unprecedented, apart from, I guess, like WA1. Obviously a different type of mineralization, ore body, but similar grades for the same commodity. So I think that's something we should definitely be excited about. We definitely need to still do more exploration at this stage, but it's already begun. Like I said, we've done our due diligence. We've collected samples. They're in the labs as we speak at the moment, getting assayed. And I think that's the primary focus, is the early indications at the moment is that, investors should be optimistic.
And this is probably more, again, a question for yourself, but the team I know is quite small. It's a tightly held, and it's there's only 4 of you on the sort of board or managerial position. And I know part of the strategy with a lot of small caps is turning on consultants here and there, but I know Kevin is going to be involved at least for the next foreseeable future. Who else is a part of the team alongside you, and how has that sort of helped bolstering and what sort of resources you're looking to turn on, polite pun, but to help sort of expedite and continue this development of the Hearts Range project?
Yeah, so like you said, consultants, contractors, we're quite reliant on a few of them. You're right, it is a small team on the board at the moment, but we have quite a few people who we like and we trust, and we've done a bit of work with in the past across Australia, and they're the people that we'll continue working with going forward.
Okay, good. And I mean, in closing, I always say there's key takeaways that everyone should remember. I think people like it in 3s. I could say 3 each if you want to do it that way. But what would you urge listeners to remember about or always keep at the forefront of their mind when thinking about the Heart Range project and what potentials it brings for, potentially access to niobium rare earths, heavy rare earths and uranium? What would some of those key takeaways be?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, we have a great commodity suite, a variety of different economic minerals we're all really optimistic about. The location of Hearts Range is very close to Alice Springs, a major city. The infrastructure's ideal. And thirdly as well, in terms of uranium, Northern Territory is a very uranium-friendly jurisdiction, so as opposed to other states in Western Australia, in Australia, sorry. So I think they're probably the 3 things I'd highlight.
Yeah, it's well said, Joel. I think you've got these high-value heavy rare earths, and as I said, there's probably a handful of companies that have exposure to dysprosium terbium, Northern Minerals being one, and then really China's the only other place really. And so I think if we can really identify and and develop the potential of these heavy rare earths, in addition to the niobium and the uranium that we're seeing, I think that's going to be a real point of difference for us. Yeah.
Okay. And for listeners and viewers that want to stay on top and potentially reach out and ask questions, I mean, where can listeners go and how can they sort of follow the news flow that's going to be coming out over the foreseeable 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, the market bull. Obviously,
off the top.
You guys are great, and CCZ through Twitter, Castillo Copper through Twitter. We're pretty active on there. So if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, we're pretty reactive. Once things happen, we like to post on there straight away. So that's probably the best platform to keep up to date.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you both, gentlemen, for joining me on the show. There's going to be a lot coming, and I can imagine, you're both going to be incredibly busy over this next sort of 6 to 12 months. Hopefully get a break over Christmas, but wait and see. But thank you so much for joining me on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of these airborne survey results and what's going to unfold with this project as the exciting exploration scene heats up. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Marketable Podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow The Market Bull on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.